Fantastic. Okay, I think we've got enough people joined now by the looks of the numbers, so that's brilliant. I'm really excited to bring you this panel made up of some amazing women from the non-profit organisation Women in Big Data, a grassroots movement founded in 2015 to help engage, inspire and connect women working in big data careers. The panel discussion will focus on what it takes to build and scale a product, a capability or a community. And after this session, you'll be able to walk away with a build framework that can be leveraged whether you're building a product, a community or a career roadmap. The framework covers all the way from concept to socializing, operationalizing and scaling. With that, I'll pass the mic to Shala, the co-founder and president of Women in Big Data, to kick off the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz. Welcome, everyone. I'm Shala Arshi, and let me give you a bit background about me. I have been in the computer industry for a long time. I did my bachelor and master degree in computer science, and then I started at Intel Corporation. Over 30 years, I was with Intel Corporation and in variety of roles from hands-on engineering work to engineering management. Even I was at Intel Capital doing equity investment on behalf of Intel in smaller companies. And I went back to more of the product side and moved into more of a director and senior director level. And a few months back, I left Intel to be in a startup companies. And I've always been so passionate about really, women. And I always, try to mentor and have a good representation of women in, my organization, in my group. Anyway, so I thought it would be a thing to mention here as we are in this conference, Women Transforming Technology Conference, that I am one of those really big advocates for women. As Liz noted, our panel discussion will focus on what it takes to build and scale a product, a community, and even a career. My colleague here, each of us, as we go through, we pass the mic to each other. They will do introduction and talk about their background, so I'm not going to cover it here. But I have had the privilege of working with all of them over the last few years as we closely work on Women in Big Data initiative. With that, let me, and then in this, of course, in this panel, we are going to be using Women in Big Data, really, our journey and our experience with Women in Big Data to further elaborate on, our discussion around build, again, whether it's career or your product or what, the community and the elements that we are using for that. So it's interesting to see how it would map nicely to the other aspect. With that, I would like to actually share my screen and talk about a little background on Women in Big Data. Am I sharing? I think I am, but I'm not sharing my, Can you see my screen?
We can, Shala, yes.
Okay, the only problem is the slide I want to share doesn't seem to be coming up properly. And this one because, okay, hold on a sec. It's telling me I should, too bad. It's that slide is not coming. This is the elements that we are going to be talking, as part of the build. And I was hoping to have this slide as I was sharing before. Looks like this is not coming nicely. I see it is small, but unfortunately, somehow it is not coming up. That's okay. I'm gonna stop right now on the sharing part, and I will talk about Women in Big Data, just a very brief, as we have a lot to discuss on this one. We started the Women in Big Data. It was really as a question. My general manager in 2015, he was asking, why the representation of female in his organization is so low. and wondering whether it was in his organization or it was at Intel, or it was an industry-wide. With that one, 3 of us, and Radhika on this panel that you will get to know her a bit as she get to talk about, her areas and her journey. And another colleague at Intel, we got together and we really, decided that, okay, let's look at what is happening in other companies in Bay Area. So we got together at Intel headquarters in Santa Clara, about 15 of us. And sure enough, the issue wasn't really unique to Intel. We all experienced similar type of lack of female representation in our organization. And with that, we decided that let's really, do something about it. We got together at SAP, we started a workshop. And with that workshop, we lay out our sort of, vision and our plan. And really, with about 15 of us. And we started one social media, the LinkedIn forum. And we really, a small group of us 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. And today, we are over 17,000 members from that 15, members. We are global, organization. We have chapters. We have now 41 chapters in 6 different, geos, North America, of course, US and Canada. We are in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and, of course, Africa. And we also in Asia, South Asia, East Asia, Australia, Latin America. So 41 chapters, it's just incredible how much we have grown. And we really, kept the same vision that we had. And we really, pretty much what we have always, thought about to inspire, connect, grow, and champion the success of women as really what we would like to make sure we continue moving forward. We have our mission. Unfortunately, I'm not able to share now as my sharing seems to have issues, but we provide with some information so you can see, and of course you can always go to our website, womeninbigdata.org, with a lot of information that you can take from that website. I do not want to get to any details. This was just a brief summary, and I would like to stop here and go to Tina Rosario, because I always wonder about what we have done in EMEA. This is the most challenging region, given such a diverse, diversity with respect to languages, culture, different countries, and how Tina really leadership has helped us to grow there. So with that, Tina, why don't you talk about yourself, introduce yourself, and talk about, what you have done in EMEA with respect to women in big data and growing that community. Go ahead.
Thanks, Shala. I'm Tina Rosario, Chief Data Officer for SAP France. I'm an American who moved across the pond to Paris, France about 6 years ago. And the decision to move was our choice. It wasn't as if one of our companies asked us to move. We decided to move to pursue our personal goals as a family, thankfully supported by our companies and careers. And it was a bit tough at first, only knowing of the French culture merely from a tourist perspective. But I think change is one of the greatest gifts. And so I quickly sought out people who shared my voice. And that came pretty easily with women in big data. And so I was asked to lead the EMEA region, and that opened the door for, I found other people with the same beliefs in openness, diversity, equality, and our passion was infectious. So it didn't really matter if we lived in different countries, came from different backgrounds, or spoke different languages. We came together for a bigger purpose, a common purpose. We supported each other, and we supported really each other's uniquenesses and rallied around this common cause of addressing the diversity gap. And I believe that communication is always important when you're creating something new. In fact, I would say even over communication is important. So I organize regular connection points with all the chapter leads, with all the people who are interested in the Women in Big Data program, so we could build on our learnings with and from each other, so we could align on goals and objectives, which we set out on a regular basis. And I personally visited each new chapter to provide some inspiration and leadership, to be able to kind of share the passion that I had with those who were starting new and supporting them in creating those chapters and getting the program started from a grassroots perspective. So overall, I think it was easy to grow because we each brought our personal networks. And so we solicited and enlisted friends who shared our point of view and who helped build these chapters up in their communities, really growing organically with people who were passionate and wanted to invest time in the program. And in the region, in the EMEA region now, as Shala mentioned, we now have 13 local chapters across Europe, Middle East. In fact, we have a chapter in Tel Aviv, Israel, that's run by a man who's quite supportive of our work and driving programs for the Israeli folks. We have Africa and serving areas which we have a really great need. And throughout all of this, I've had the chance to connect with some really strong, impressive men and women who feel that they can make a difference by engaging with Women in Big Data program. So one of the folks I had the chance to connect with is on our call today, Naomi, who's leading our work in South Africa. So perhaps I'll turn it over to Naomi to introduce herself and share some of her experiences in building Women in Big Data in South Africa.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Tina. Like Tina mentioned, I'm Naomi. I grew up in South Africa, Rustenburg. It's a small mining town where we mine platinum that makes it all the way to different parts of the world, into the catalytic converters in cars and some of the batteries that we use for our phones. I had actually started my career in research psychology, and I majored in the discipline. I then went into business, where I obviously then started to have an appreciation of talent and how we get to talent and how we headhunt talent, how we find great people to work in our businesses so that we can solve the problems that we are intending to solve. And in that journey, I got introduced to strategic management through my work, and was able to then get an opportunity to go study my master's in the subject in Dublin. And while I was there, I actually got reintroduced back into data analytics via an internship that I had. And it was in coming back to the country, this was now 2018, early 2018, where I wanted to still continue my journey of understanding data analytics and understanding how we can use data to solve the issues, to drive decision-making in our organizations. And I wanted to be part of a community of women, specifically women, because in my work as a headhunter, I was often plagued with the leadership gap, especially the diversity aspect of it, where we are constantly searching for leaders in various disciplines, in various functions in the business, and we are looking for women, but they are nowhere to be found. And obviously I knew that once data then becomes the new oil and it makes it to our shores, we are going to have the same problem with regards to how we grow the talent pipeline for women. So I got introduced to Women in Big Data, and that's when I had the inspiration to also rope in my friend, like Tina said. You know, she was the only computer science major that I knew at the time who was a woman, and I managed to convince her to found this chapter with us, and we've been growing from strength to strength since 2018. We launched in November through the support of SAP and Tina. And we've really been growing and understanding how it's so difficult to get people, or rather the youth in Africa, especially because we are such a young continent, to get interested in technology. It's intimidating for some people because we are a consumer-driven economy still, and we're not really manufacturing our own technologies. So a lot of the young people don't see themselves working for the big tech firms, working to solve problems using technology, working to solve problems using data. So we are doing a lot of the evangelist work in this space or in this country. We've recently launched or helped launch a Nigeria chapter, sorry, and we are seeing the similar trends with regards to young women falling behind in how we create these technologies. As you know, we do have a diversity problem within technology, and how we actually come up with some solutions that could impact all of us as human beings, Black, regardless of the race, really. So it has been challenging, but it has been also rewarding to see those light bulb moments in some of the members that we engage with, when we talk about how they can use data analytics, or how they can use big data methodology, machine learning in various disciplines or functions that they are in, whether they're in marketing, finance, human resources. So it has been quite heartwarming to see. And I'm really glad that we are able to touch those people when they need us to. It has been really, really, a learning journey, specifically for myself as a leader, as a young leader, trying to get people to see the vision that I know that we are capable of. And this is one of those opportunities for us to also touch those people, to say, this is a good cause. We are really out here trying to make a difference in the world, and trying to make sure that we champion the success of women in technology. And with that, I will hand over to Radhika, who will also have an opportunity to introduce herself. But Radhika, as one of the founding members of Women in Big Data, what is your first-hand experience in bootstrapping this first chapter in the Bay Area in 2015? How did you go from defining this idea and actually making sure that it's realized?
Great question, Naomi. I just enjoyed listening to you, the passion that you actually bring to the organization. It's just amazing. But before I go into answering that question, just by way of introduction, let me just say it's such a pleasure to be here with my tribe, all of you here. And like many of my fellow panelists here, I wear multiple hats for the community. In addition to being a co-founder and board member, I also lead ecosystem partnerships as well as the North America region, which has about 17 chapters today. In my day job, I'm the director of Cloud Foundation Solutions Engineering at VMware. I have to say, I have grown personally and professionally with women in big data community, because there are lots of opportunities that you want to actually get involved in that you may or may not get as part of your regular job. But being part of a volunteer organization has opened up those learning opportunities for me. So I've been able to flex my learning muscles and get into totally uncomfortable zones through volunteering work. It truly is very rewarding. So if you can give some time back to definitely be part of any volunteering activity, it's such a learning and rewarding experience. Back to the question now. How did we bootstrap? As Shala mentioned, we started with a question, a simple question. How do we solve for lack of diversity in our teams? And when I say our teams, at that time, it was the big data and AI teams. This was in June 2015. And obviously, it was very personal to many of us because we wanted to see that diverse representation where we were working. Now, through the initial set of roundtable conversations, which we were having amongst ourselves, we realized quickly that any solution that we come up with had to address for gaps along 4 areas. There was lack of awareness about what opportunities lay in the field. So we had to do something about creating the awareness. There were not enough training opportunities that people knew how to actually upskill themselves on. And I'm talking technical training as well as business training. So we had to fill the gap there. We needed to create a safe space for people to come together and network. We saw that a lot of the technical meetups did not actually have enough representation. So what exactly was going there? We had to address for that. And then we wanted to make sure that we had a meaningful way to guide each other through some sort of a mentor-mentee opportunity. So the initial 15 members divided our focus amongst these 4 areas: awareness, training, networking, and mentorship. And then we just sprung into action. This was in June 2015. July 2015, we actually set up our LinkedIn forum. And this was the way we were drumming up awareness on our initiative. This allowed us to actually recruit more volunteers, socialize our ideas with many technology companies that were players in big data like Cloudera, SAP, IBM, MapR at that time, now part of HPE. So we were able to secure agreements from them to offer technical training workshops for our community members. One of our volunteers raised her hand and said, you know what, I can actually come up with a logo. That beautiful logo you see in the background, that's an earlier version of that was created by one of the volunteers. Womenandbigdata.org as a website was launched in December 2015, January 2016. So from ideation to actually realizing the value, from awareness to actually starting a training event, by February 2016, we had the first Bay Area meetup set up and the first event, a day-long hands-on workshop on Apache Hadoop in partnership with Cloudera. We had space for 40 members, 40 people to sign up for that event. We had over 40 people sign up. It was a full class. And by end of that week, we had 120 people who joined that meetup. So we had actually drummed up enough support. We had seen, we have delivered value. And that first chapter today has over 3,500 community members. It's one of the largest growing chapters for women in tech in the Bay Area. And it's offered over 120 events to the community, all free of charge. So when I look back, I'd say a healthy dose of ideation, vision, passion, and springing into action. These are your elements to actually start up a capability in the build phase. Now, we can say that you can actually apply those same ingredients as we bootstrap our career, right? Whether we are actually starting a new job or whether we are repivoting our focus to an adjacent career, we can pretty much apply those same components. You always start with, what is it that I want to accomplish at this point in my life, in my career? And Tina touched upon this. It was a personal decision for her to actually move to France because maybe there was a personal goal to target. Am I passionate about what I want to do? That's a second question you ask. And then you have to roll up your sleeves and just give it a go, because you would never know until you try something. So that's, I just want to draw parallels between what we've learned in our community to how we can apply it in our careers as well. But let's pivot from, okay, you building up a capability or your career, then where do you go from there? What happens once you land that opportunity or once you actually build up that capability? How do we actually make it grow? And I think all of us have some lessons from learnings to share in that space. A growth phase is where we actually have more hands in the pie, right? Because now you're no more small. You have your community members or your customers. If you have a product, then you actually have your investors or sponsors. And then you actually have your team, your employees, your volunteering community, right? All of them are actually helping you deliver those programs and services. In a growth phase for any organization, be it a business or be it a nonprofit, you have to nurture and understand your audience, whether it's a product, community, or career. And this is something we have learned painfully, as well as through a lot of collaborative work, I should say. So at a high level, number one, know your customer. You always start there. Now, from a community perspective, these are all our community members who are eagerly looking to see if there is value from the programs and services that we offer them. Is it making a difference for them? So you start there, and then you actually figure out how do you actually tune yourself. Number two, and this is not in any sort of priority order, all of these are important, right? Number two, your team. these are the people, the volunteers. Why do they want to actually stay engaged? Why do they want to offer their time? They are driven by their passion and unified vision. But it is important to nurture that volunteering work. Do they feel inspired to continue to stay? And we have seen this with a lot of chapters. Sometimes volunteers come and go. So how do we actually continue to keep them motivated? And last but not least, your investor group. And in our case, in a community work, it's your donors, your funding groups. They are always interested in seeing the results, the value and impact. So understanding the needs of who we are delivering value is key to growth. And I know, Naomi, I'm going to actually pivot this right back at you. You have firsthand experience with this. You have seen what the key drivers are for a sustainable tech ecosystem in South Africa. So please say more on that.
Thank you so much, Radhika. I think what you've touched on is very important in terms of having the vision, having the passion, and making sure that you're rolling up your sleeves and doing the work that needs to be done. In terms of the drivers for us in our country, we are largely driven by the business need to have these skills that we are trying to train people for. Luckily, with our community, the women that we work with are very engaged and want to learn new ways of doing things. They want to know how to apply and learn how to apply, analytics in some of the work that they do. They want to take it further and develop certain solutions that are perhaps social, have a social benefit from protecting other women and creating applications and in making sure that we are able to police or help the police with regards to protecting women in our country. So it really does vary in terms of, what the drivers are. There's also what we did initially in our startup phase is we got in touch with a lot of businesses that we knew were, in this realm of doing, business in terms of, the telcos and some of the tech, businesses that are operating in our country. And they also gave us, that platform to touch and come and talk to their women and come and evangelize this way of working, this new way of working, which worked out pretty well pre-COVID. The issue is now we're in a pandemic and we have to now deal with how do we manage and balance, access to the internet and how affordable is it, and we're working really, really hard to make sure that whatever we do cover in our workshops, we're able to record and use some of the platforms that are available to us so that our members can, access us in the time that they can. So kind of like an on-demand content. We're also learning as we go because, this way of operating, it was sprung on us, and we were relying primarily on face-to-face engagements. We've also had opportunities to work with other women-led communities and nonprofits, which have helped us really, evangelize and touch more women and impact more women, which I'm really, really proud of. Everywhere I go, I get asked, when are we having that, face-to-face again? Unfortunately, we have to stick to the regulations. But in terms of the talent ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, it is buzzing. There is a lot of investor interest in our continent, and which obviously drives the solutions that then end up being developed by the people that, work in this industry, which is great because then we are able to then leverage some of those partnerships and work with some of those people who work in those businesses, and they are able to also come and teach our members, how they apply some of the techniques and methodologies that they use, which is awesome. Because what we have found is that people do resonate with what is actually what they're able to apply in their day-to-day. It doesn't help them if we're teaching them, high level pie in the sky type of things. If we are making sure that the content is relevant for their way of working, that really does make a difference. And we're able to then collect our, our membership experiences through our various platforms that we have, so that we are able to then cater for customized workshops that resonate our members. And that's how we've been able to keep our chapter going. That's how we've been also able to keep our leadership team going and motivated, making sure we stay resilient in these tough times, making sure that we all work together, because we're all working to have and make a difference in technology through this work that we do. And we really, really, are passionate about this, as we are all women. But I think Shala would also be better placed to, just take us through how you've been able to grow the program, Shala, across Europe, and some of the challenges of the pandemic. How have you managed to leverage social media, for example, for the program?
Okay, this is actually for Tina. I thought
Tina, sorry.
Yeah,
Tina.
No, I'll take it. No, it's perfect. I mean, thank you, Naomi, for talking about how South Africa addressed some of the challenges. And I think just like everyone around the world, we shifted into virtual work mode last year. And our Women in Big Data program was certainly able to adapt. We didn't let the pandemic stifle our growth, but it did challenge us and stretched our thinking in different ways. Our chapters, and frankly, for me too, on a personal level, expanded our social media presence. We trained our leaders on how to maximize social media. Each chapter in EMEA, for example, created a new role specifically to manage social media content and delivery. We learned how to use Zoom effectively for our meetings and events. We created LinkedIn channels and YouTube channels for storing and sharing content. I mean, we rallied around this new capabilities around social media. We, one chapter in EMEA completely switched from in-person events to creating a weekly content feed on LinkedIn, curating content from partners and sponsors, spotlighting members and promoting various events. And this was a positive way to keep members engaged, to keep the leaders engaged, and having the ability to share fresh virtual content. I mentioned earlier the importance of communication. And so we tried very early on to connect and stay connected as much as possible and to continue to deliver programming. And that programming ultimately helped us grow our membership in different ways. Women in Big Data events continued online with more diversity in content. And given the platform, we were able to reach a larger audience. Naomi mentioned, the ability to have on-demand content, the ability to share content globally and take advantage of recorded content that's readily accessible to all of those around the globe. So I think overall, social media has been a well-received tool, not just for sharing content, but also for showcasing leaders and members of our community, spotlighting people who are role models, giving them a chance for some promotion, recognizing those who've contributed to the program, celebrating those who have made a difference and have had a positive impact and support of our mission. So social media also gave us a channel to share recognition, which was really very well received by our community and helped us to spread the message out to those who may not have been aware of what Women in Big Data is all about. And earlier in our journey, we developed an accountability matrix with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And having that really helped structure our work. So we stayed true to that original design and intent. And that was really helpful during the pandemic, to have a clear understanding of what it was we intended to do and what our responsibilities were. And so we held ourselves accountable to those important roles and responsibilities that we defined at the very beginning of the program in that early build phase. So as we grew, we continued to stay focused on those responsibilities. So for example, as a regional lead of EMEA, I made sure that during the pandemic and on a regular basis to check in with our local leaders and provide them with support and inspiration and make sure they were getting the kind of resources that they needed. Even if I wasn't able to connect with them in person, we found a way to stay connected. We found a way to keep engaged, and we stayed true to those responsibilities and accountabilities to keep things moving, to keep things going. So we didn't let the pandemic impact our priority to deliver diverse programming. We kept going in different ways by delivering regional, local, global types of content supported by our alliances and the broad ecosystem of partners and sponsors that help us each and every day as we look for content, as we look for speakers, as we look for ideas. They're super important as a part of our overall program. And perhaps those of you who are product leaders can think about and translate this concept into the real challenges that you have in scaling a business or creating a startup. And some unfortunately fail at this important step of really, understanding your audience and then growing the capabilities that you think are important. And one thing to consider is to do enough work up front to validate the ideas that you may have before and during development, to get out there and deliver, really, and to try and see what works. For example, Women in Big Data, we've tried many different types of programs and topics, and over time, we've learned and adjusted to what works the best for our different communities. We've given the local chapters the ability to grow organically and drive programming that suits the needs of their communities, because who knows their communities better than the people who live and breathe in that environment. We formally survey our membership, though, as a program to gain insight into the type of programming and the type of delivery that our community wants to see and how they want it to be delivered. And so it's important to connect with your membership, to connect with your user base, to ensure that you're meeting their needs. And we do that before, during, and after events on a regular basis, so we can use that insight to drive change and to make shifts in the programming. And I think it's important to have that touch point, that ability to validate your ideas when you're in that growth stage, to be able to know and understand that what you are delivering, what your ideas are, that are actually delivering value. And for us, it means to deliver the best programming that we can to our communities. And even as we've grown, we've realized that we have different resource needs. So as we've continued to grow and scale and become more global and have a broader set of members and diverse set of programming, we've realized that our needs have changed. So for example, we've taken a closer look at our sponsorship and funding to make sure that we are meeting the growing needs of our communities, that we're able to support them with the kinds of resourcing that they need, not just for today, but being able to anticipate further growth and what's going to be needed down the road so that we can prepare and be ready to support the continuous growth that we know we're going to have. So the level of sponsorship we needed as we were in the build phase is quite different than what we need in order to be able to grow substantially today, considering the kind of sponsors that we need, the funding that we need, and from those who can help us continue to scale. So we learned a lot during the past years, for sure. And during this time of change, we really focused on being resilient, to not let the pandemic get in our way of our goals and objectives, to stay true to our vision, to stay true to the roles and responsibilities that we knew we needed to have in order for us to be successful. I think that's a lesson that perhaps every program can relate to. And for us, it was about embracing the change and staying connected, thinking creatively and differently, and mainly by focusing on continuing to deliver as expected. So today, as Shala mentioned earlier, Women in Big Data has scaled from 15 smart women sitting around a conference table in California to over 18,000 members around the globe with over 40 chapters in local communities. So huge growth, huge opportunities, even in a pandemic time, finding ways to thrive, finding ways to continue to reach out to our community and have them also give us feedback, using the tools that are available to us via social media, and staying connected with each other and supporting each other, I think has really been some of the key factors that have allowed us to continue to grow during this time. And I'm so proud of the women on this call and the men and the women who are out there in our chapters doing the groundwork on top of their day jobs, and not letting things slide, and knowing that we needed to reach out and touch our community during the pandemic and support them as best we can. And we did make some shifts and challenges for sure, just like everybody else did over the past year. But I'm super proud of the work that we've done. And I'm super proud to see the numbers, because I think that people are really recognizing that they need communities like ours. They need programming like the kind that we deliver. And this is not for us just a one-time exercise. This is an ongoing program where we connect with people. And I think that's made a huge difference. So there's definitely been some challenges along the way. And Radhika, I'm going to hand over to you, because I know you've been there. You were in that conference room at the very start. And so it'd be interesting, I think, to hear your point of view on some of the challenges that we uncovered based on your experience over the years.
Thank you, Tina. And you made such great points here about all that we've been through. As you mentioned, resilience. In fact, when you talk about growth, we've had the most massive growth just in the last year. 2019, end of 2019, we closed at 29 chapters. And in the last year, we've grown so much, we had 41 chapters. And a lot of that expansion has been in the EMEA and South Asia region, which tells you that there is a lot of appetite and a need. And in this pandemic has actually surfaced a lot of the inequalities, disproportionate amount of inequalities in the society. So to be able to actually equip ourselves with the knowledge and skill sets that we need to actually be able to compete in a global workforce, there's a big gap that needs to be filled in, and women in big data is actually stepping in there. But talking about, okay, you've grown, we've built something, we have grown, but now scale is a whole nother beast. Every company, every profitable and non-profit, not-for-profit entity goes through this. If I think about scale, I think of 4 things that we are currently focused on: infrastructure, funding, the people aspect, and the operating strategy. These continue to be the focus for us. It's no different than what many product leaders may be facing today. But if you want to double click a little more on this, on the infrastructure side, right? The questions we are asking ourselves, from chapter expansion to regional expansion, how do we make the programs that have worked at a regional level to at a global level? What kind of platform features do we need to be able to deliver these services to all our community members? What kind of communication tools do we need? What kind of CRM tools do we need for us to be able to effectively reach our members? We don't have, as a nonprofit organization, we actually started in a very scrappy way. And we are now realizing that there's a lot of this that we need to actually have as global standard practices and processes that we need to put in place. On the funding and budgeting side, and obviously we are looking and evaluating a lot of the platform tools, open source tools, for us to be able to scale our programs, but there are license costs involved there. There are support costs involved there. So in light of all the other priorities, we have to figure out where our input work streams, revenue streams are, what can we budget for this year, and for this, that will set us up for success for the next few years. On the people aspect, how do I talked about connecting all the members, but the standardized practices and process for bootstrapping new chapters to continue to survey the needs. It was much easier to survey the needs of the first chapter, but to be able to do that for 41 chapters and to distill that feedback and be able to actually course correct or refine our programs, that's a humongous task ahead of us. But We talk about 18,000 members, but the real question we keep asking ourselves is how many of them continue to stay actively engaged? Is there something that is making our audience, our customers, our community members tune in and out? What is giving them that continuous value from being part of this organization? So the people aspect and the practices is a big aspect of scale for us. And last but not least, on the operating strategy, right? What worked before is not necessarily lending itself very well right now. So especially with 5 nonprofit entities in a global organization, there are local compliance requirements, laws that we need to adhere to from a reporting standpoint. In terms of operating board, do we have one board for all nonprofit entities, or do we have them for just each of those nonprofits? Do we have some kind of an oversight body, a global executive committee like the one that we have, that can actually provide the necessary oversight and decision making for the entire organization? How do we manage industry partnerships and funding strategy at a local level, at a regional level, at a global level? I know as I list it out, it sounds overwhelming, even for me as I saying it, these are all the big questions we need to tackle, but every business has to go through this as they expand. And this will ensure that we build the capabilities and resources to support our future growth and serve our communities even better. Now, at each step of scaling, it's super important that we are measuring outcomes, not the outputs, but the outcomes. And Shala, you know where I'm going with this. How do we measure outcomes? How do we measure success? And when do we know that we've been successful with what we are building, whether it's our career, our community, or our product?
Okay, thank you, Radhika. I know we are almost running out of time. We only have about 16 minutes, and I want to be very brief on that one, so we get to some Q&A, and if there is any last, sort of a word from anyone, cover that. But on really, how do you measure the success? As far as I'm concerned, really, in general, customer satisfaction is your ultimate success. If it is a product, the customer buys it, the customer talks about it, they're happy with it. Those are the best, way that advocate for what you have. And they would be the best promotion that you get. Word of mouth is the best way you do it. And, it's the same thing. If it's, a community, the services that you provide for your community, and if, the members are happy with the services, those are the ones that would really, take it to other friends, to take it to other, colleague, in order to really, make sure they join it. They would be part of your really, platform that make it successful. So, just to brief it, is really, the ultimate is the customer satisfaction. When it comes to your career, it may be a bit different. It's you. You are the one that's responsible for your career, and you want to really make sure, I think, you already talked about it, Radhika, that it is really, you have to have a goal and achieve that goal. And that really, that would be the measure of success. Your goal in your career could be really, try to, whatever, advance, go up to become a VP. Okay. Set a goal and see if you become a vice president and if you achieve it, or it is financial achievement. It's all, what is it important to you? And once you reach that one, it really where you are really, making sure that you have been successful. I was going to talk about, when we were talking about growth, there was one aspect of the growth that we didn't touch on that one. And that's really the ecosystem that you have to build and the partner that you need to have in order to be successful, and the allies that you need to have. So if I just, touch on the ally part, that it's so true for your career. Also, to be successful, you need allies. You need those that would advocate for you. So build that network, build that ecosystem, build that alliances wherever you are. If it is your product, you know what the ecosystem for your product is. It's going to be the customer, the suppliers, the even competitors, it would to deliver that, product. If it is your community, it's all the partner that you build, around your community. And then, of course, for your career, it would be the allies that you need to have. Remember that allies doesn't mean if you're all women, We're not necessarily trying to just make sure we find, another woman to be our advocate, to be our ally, to help us to grow and, achieve, the success that we are looking for. I tell you, I want to give this message because it is something dear to my heart. I have experienced it firsthand. Sometimes women are not the best advocate. They may not be the best allies. And this is something that we all learn, and part of our Women in Big Data, we trying very hard to make sure we give that comfort, that platform, that we can really, make our members to feel comfortable to be part of it and to really, be at ease on that one, to give them the networking opportunity that they can really, help each other and build, what they need in order to grow and in order to scale in that regard. So with that, I would like to see if, let's see, we already discussed that one. I think, we would, do we have time for really that, or do we want to get to more of any question that we might have, or to the codes?
I do want to ask if there are any responses to the poll we posted earlier. Alison, do you have any response?
We do. And the majority of the audience was not familiar with women in big data.
Okay, so we reached a new
87%.
audience.
Yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think maybe leaving the audience with how they can actually stay connected with women and big data before we actually go through some quick quotes and learnings from each of us. I think that would be good. So Naomi, do you want to actually add something to that?
Sure. I think from my side, I'm going to quote my favorite author, Chimamanda Adichie, and she says, the single story creates stereotypes. The problem with stereotypes is not that they aren't true, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. And I think the story for women in big data is that because we are diverse, because we are so, sparsely located across the globe, it's not just one story that is coming through. We are making sure that each of the regions that we are connected with, that are part of our community, each of our members are, met at their ground level, at grassroots, where they need it most. And it's not just one story that we are filtering that is either westernized or, Africanized or Europeanized. It's a story that is representative of who they are and resonates with them. And I think that is very, very powerful for connection.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Yeah. Shala, before I hand it over to you, I just want to actually say, I hope, the discussion that we've had here today, the shared learnings, the constructs we talked about resonated with the audience who were able to join us today. And as we've heard through this conversation, whether you're kind of building a community or bootstrapping it from scratch, or you're building alliances, we're measuring success to adapting to changes, and adapting to changes, that's key. Irrespective of whether you're building a community or launching a product or relaunching your career, these constructs are something we need to keep front and center. And we need to approach them with the same kind of rigor. And I think, in our professional lives, we put so much emphasis and discipline in actually bootstrapping a capability, a product, launching a product that some of us have recently gone through. Do we really take those learnings and apply it towards our career? How many of us actually have a career roadmap that maps against these constructs? How many of us put effort into building those meaningful alliances, those sponsors, those partners who can actually be the ambassadors for us? So hopefully we all actually kind of take this. And I have this, I always say my career, that's a work in progress. So I have to take these constructs and retune it and apply it to my career. As we wrap up here, I want to share a quick quote that really resonates with me. With great power comes great responsibility. It's alternatively known as the Peter Parker principle, something you might have heard in every Spider-Man movie. Now, we might not all have the spidey senses, that doesn't mean that you don't have the power. I mean, honestly, I think the word greatness and power, when they come together, it's overrated, and it's also very relative. But remember that we all actually have the power and to make a difference in society. We just need to realize it, acknowledge it, and kind of seize it. And what has happened this last year around the globe, what's continuing to unfold in many parts of the world today, it surfaced the disproportional inequalities that exist around us. So if we are in a position to give someone a hand, to inspire someone, to connect someone to an opportunity, to champion for someone's success, we just have to do it. And we are more powerful than we think we are, and we are empowered to make the change. So let's all go be change agents and take the responsibility to do that. So with that, Shala, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay, thank you, Radhika. I guess for me, I have a couple of quotes, but one of them that we have touched practically, during the discussion, is the quote that resonated with me is by Helen Keller, and where she says, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." This is absolutely true when it comes to a community. What we have done with Women in Big Data, it's incredible, how much we have grown at and how much more we can do together. And to me, it is the key to the success that we are. Not just, growth in a sense that we would just, have more, members, but as I mentioned before, build our ecosystem, build more partnership. That really makes us even stronger and hopefully, scale and grow more. The other one that I like, again, based on the conversation, I also, picked that quote. It's by Jeff Bezos, Amazon, of course, you know him, where he says, "Be stubborn on vision, but flexible on details." And this is really, our vision has not changed. From the beginning, we had the same vision as we talk about it, to inspire, connect, grow, and champion the success of women in big data. But we have been very flexible with respect to execution side of it. We want to make sure, that our pillars are true. We do either networking or, in some areas, we have training, networking, awareness, mentoring. Some chapter may decide that only for their region, but really makes the most, sense. It's to have, for example, mentoring opportunity or to have the training opportunity. We gave them framework, and we let them really, customize it for what makes the most sense for their local. But we kept that vision always to heart. And for us, it's really make sure, we do inspire others. We do connect them. We do help them, to grow. And we do champion with our awareness, that's what we do. Every year, Radhika, you are one of those that they have been championing a lot of, our leadership, and those that they have really, helped the community to grow with acknowledging, what they have done. We have all those, champions, and we have it on our website. Please do check our website, womeninbigdata.org. If you have any question, join us. It's an amazing, movement, and we love to have more volunteers. We love to have, more people part of our core team. So contact us. Easy to contact us. So with that, I would like to actually pass it to Naomi. If Naomi, you have any code, anything you would like to share?
I had the opportunity. I think let me give Tina to close out the session for us.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I've got my quick quote. "Nothing has ever been achieved by the person who says it can't be done." So don't let your idea just stay in your head. Actually go out and try it. Wise words from Eleanor Roosevelt. So try not to be caught up in the negative thinking of "I can't," but think in terms of what can be done and get started. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. As Shala said, you can find us at womeninbigdata.org. You can follow each of us on LinkedIn. You can also find the Women in Big Data Forum on LinkedIn. But I'm hoping that we have time for some questions. I think we have a few minutes left, Allison, if we have questions out there.
It looks like most of the questions that were asked, you answered in your panel.
Oh, wow.
All
And
right.
you talked
Yeah.
about how to adapt to changes and stay resilient. You talked about how to make sure you're engaged with your members. It feels like you answered the questions.
Oh, that's super
All
then.
right. Well, in that case,
Super.
as someone, I just found this the most brilliant session. As someone who was tasked with setting up a data and insights team 11 years ago now, and I was filled with positive vibes that I was going to attract lots of women to the role, and got none, and
Yeah.
ended up recruiting men. If this movement had been around 11 years ago, it would have just made the hugest difference. And the thing that I found recruiting that deterred people was this idea that you had to be a like super mathematical super brain
Yes.
to
Yes.
be involved. And so I found Naomi talking about her background in psychology and social science just really insightful. And I wrote down a load of words that you all demonstrated and didn't explicitly say, but you know, you demonstrated courage, the curiosity that you need, the ability to experiment and see what works. All of these are skills that are not are highly valued in big data, but not necessarily talked about enough. And Tina talked about adding the qualitative data in the surveys to the data that you're already collecting, and the application of that data, using that data to see what you could do better. And so much of these skills are things that all women have, everyone has, but somehow they're not recognized, or weren't 11 years ago, recognized as being important data skills. And so it's just been a fantastic session for me to listen to you, to see that someone had the courage to stand up and start this movement, and then just hear about your journey and know that if I'm ever in that situation of needing to recruit a data and insights team again, I know who to reach out to so that I can get a balanced and representative team. So thank you. It's just been a fantastic session.
Thank you so much, Liz, and we appreciate the opportunity. I do want to say that we have actually a couple of attachments to our session, a little more on the organization as well as about the constructs, the build constructs, so the audience can always leverage that. Once again, this has been amazing. And I know for Tina and Naomi, it's 11 p.m. for them. So it's very late. I really appreciate that. Ladies joining. Thank you.
No worries. Happy to do it. Liz, come join us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please. We need more people.
But thank you very much. That was a great session.
Yeah.
And thank
Thank
you.
you.
Naomi, Tina, Radhika, the best.
Awesome.
Liz
Thank you.
and Angela, thank you so
All
much
right.
for the support.
Liz and Allison, thank you so much. And Kevin, really appreciate you keeping this a very safe space for us to have this conversation and the chat on the side. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Stay well.
Bye.
Bye. And yes, I will join you now that we're off air. I'm not going to.
Liz, are you in London? I'll send her a note.